At my sister's engagement party, beneath elegant lights and surrounded by cheerful faces, something unimaginable happened. My 10-year-old daughter was slapped so hard by my own sister that she collapsed to the floor, sobbing in front of 200 stunned guests. No one stepped in. Not even my parents. Instead, they turned on us, placing the blame on me and telling us to leave. That night, I didn't just walk out of a party. I walked out of a family. What happened after that slap didn't merely spoil their carefully planned celebration. It ripped open a truth they'd spent years burying, and for once, everyone saw it. My name is Evelyn Brooks. I'm 35 years old, a widow, and the mother of a girl who has saved me in more ways than I can count. This isn't just a story about a night that went terribly wrong. It's about what came to light when the facade finally cracked, the secrets, the silence, and the masks we all wore too well. If you passed me on the street, you might assume I had everything under control. I live in a quiet corner of Los Angeles, in a modest 2-bedroom apartment that once belonged to my late husband. It's no palace, but it's ours. My husband died 3 years ago in a highway accident. One moment, he was on the phone with me, saying he'd be home late, and the next, I was signing his death certificate. Since then, I've raised our daughter Zoe on my own. She's 10 now, kind-hearted, imaginative, a bit introverted, and has the kind of eyes that seem to see more than most adults ever do. I've worked hard to give her a sense of stability. I freelance from home as a digital illustrator. We've built a life with our own rhythms, morning cereal, weekend library trips, and late-night Disney marathons with bowls of popcorn. But peace can be a fragile thing, especially when your own family treats you like a disgrace they never wanted. My parents, Linda and Frank, never fully forgave me for marrying someone they considered beneath our class. They barely acknowledged my husband when he was alive, and after he died, it felt like they believed I had done it just to embarrass them further. Then there's my younger sister, Jessica. To them, she's always been the golden child. Blonde, brilliant, beautiful, and now a wildly successful lifestyle influencer with close to 2 million followers. Every image, every post, every curated moment is designed for admiration. I, on the other hand, have always been the forgotten one, the inconvenience. Then, just last week, something unexpected arrived. A thick, cream-colored envelope showed up in our mailbox, the kind that smelled faintly of luxury and intent. Inside was a formal invitation. You are cordially invited to the engagement celebration of Jessica Brooks and Adam Westfield. The venue? Skyline Rooftop, Los Angeles. Dress code formal, RSVP required. There was no personal message, no warm, "We'd love to see you." Just a name, a date, and a subtle reminder that I was still an afterthought. I glanced at Zoe, who was spinning across our small kitchen, socks sliding on the tile floor. She noticed the envelope in my hand. "Is that from Grandma?" she asked, her eyes full of hope. I paused. "It's from Aunt Jessica. She's getting engaged." Her face lit up. "Are we invited?" I wanted to say no. I wanted to rip it in half, but instead I nodded. "Yes, we are." I didn't know it then, but accepting that invitation would change everything. Zoe spent the next few days completely absorbed in picking out what to wear. She finally chose her soft lavender dress, the one with embroidered daisies on the sleeves, the same one she'd worn to her last school recital. She twirled in front of the mirror, arms outstretched like she was catching sunlight. "Do you think Aunt Jessica will like it?" she asked. I forced a smile. "She'll love it, sweetheart," I told Zoe. But what I didn't say was what I really thought. If she even bothers to notice you. The Skyline rooftop was exactly what I expected, extravagant, glittering, and cold. Floor-to-ceiling glass surrounded the rooftop, offering a sweeping view of Los Angeles. Soft jazz floated through the air while waiters in black ties weaved between guests, balancing gold trays filled with cocktails and hors d'oeuvres. Zoe clutched my hand tightly as we stepped into the room. Almost immediately, I felt it, that shift. The glances, the half-smiles that didn't reach their eyes. The atmosphere thickened as though our very presence had disrupted something sacred. My mother, Linda, spotted us from across the room. She moved toward us in a sleek navy satin gown, her hair pulled into a severe bun, her face as sharp as her tone. She gave me a nod so faint it felt like a dismissal before turning to Zoe. "Who let you in here?" she muttered through clenched teeth. "So this is a formal event, not a playground." Before I could respond, she placed a hand on Zoe's shoulder and gave her a shove, not enough to knock her over, but hard enough to make her stumble. Already nervous, Zoe lost her balance slightly. In that instant, it happened. The glass of red punch in her hands slipped. Time slowed. The punch arced through the air in a vivid crimson stream and splashed across Jessica's immaculate ivory gown. A collective gasp spread through the room. Jessica stood in shock, staring at the spreading stain on her midsection, deep red like a wound. Then her gaze snapped toward Zoe. "You stupid little girl," she screamed. "Do you have any idea what you've done? You've ruined my dress." Before I could react, she raised her hand and slapped Zoe hard. The sound cracked through the space, sharp and brutal. Zoe let out a cry and crumpled to the ground, sobbing. Her hands flew to her face, shielding the pain and humiliation. I rushed to her, dropping to my knees and wrapping my arms around her trembling body. "What is wrong with you?" I shouted at Jessica. Before she could respond, my mother cut in. "You never should have brought her here," she snapped. "You've humiliated us enough." My father, Frank, appeared by her side, his face expressionless, his voice cold. "Take your daughter and leave." I stood slowly, my whole body shaking. "I just need to explain." "No," Linda barked. "Security." 2 guards in black suits stepped forward. I didn't fight it. I scooped up my sobbing daughter and held her close as we were ushered through the crowd like criminals. Behind us, murmurs rose, phones clicked, glasses clinked. Jessica stood tall, her soiled gown clinging to her frame, her lips twisted in revulsion. Just before I reached the exit, I saw Megan, an old college friend. Her face was pale, her phone lifted. She was recording. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed in silence. The apartment was dark except for the soft amber glow of a street lamp outside. Zoe had cried herself to sleep, her cheek still marked with the faint red imprint of Jessica's slap. I gently dabbed it with a cold cloth, though my hands trembled too much to hold it steady. I stared around our home, our small, imperfect sanctuary. The walls were covered with Zoe's drawings, the worn bookshelf my husband once built, a slightly crooked photo of the 3 of us smiling at the beach. And yet, I had brought her into that toxic place. I had led her straight into harm's way. The weight of guilt pressed hard on my chest. Then my phone buzzed, a message from Megan. "Hey, I don't know if you saw me at the party, but I recorded what happened, all of it." "I couldn't just stand there. Do you want me to send it?" Megan had written. My breath caught. My fingers hovered over the screen, frozen. I finally typed yes, barely able to move. Seconds later, the video downloaded. I opened it. And there it was. Every second, every frame. The guests, the thick tension in the room, Linda's cruel whisper, Zoe stumbling, the punch arcing through the air, Jessica's hand striking her face, my voice screaming, my parents ordering us to leave, security escorting us out, Zoe's heart-wrenching sobs. It played like a horror film, except the villains were people meant to protect us. Tears streamed down my face, but not from sorrow this time, from rage. I played the video again. This time I focused on their faces. Jessica's curled lip of disgust, Linda's cold dominance, Frank's lifeless indifference, and the rest of the crowd, standing still, watching it all, doing nothing. They saw it. They knew. I walked into the living room and found Zoe curled on the couch, her small body wrapped around her stuffed fox. Her eyes fluttered open as I approached. "Mommy," she whispered. "I'm here, baby," I said softly, kneeling beside her. She looked at me, her voice barely audible. "Was it my fault?" "No," I said, my voice firm. "None of this was your fault." She paused for a moment, then said quietly, "I didn't mean to mess anything up. Wanted to be part of the family. I pulled her close and hugged her tightly, so hard it almost hurt to breathe. Then she did something I'll never forget. She sat up, reached for my phone, and opened the video. Her voice was calm, steady. "People should know the truth," she said, and then she recorded herself. Sitting cross-legged, her cheek still swollen but her expression brave. "My name is Zoe. I'm 10 years old. Yesterday I went to my Aunt Jessica's engagement party. I spilled a drink by accident. She hit me, then they kicked us out." That was it. Simple, honest, unshakably true. My fingers trembled as I held the phone. Megan had done her part. Now it was my turn. I didn't know what the world would do with the truth once it saw it, but I knew one thing. I wouldn't be silent any longer. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the blinds, warm and detached, as if the world hadn't witnessed my child being assaulted and thrown out like she didn't matter. Zoe was still asleep when I opened my laptop. My fingers hesitated over the keyboard as I searched. Child assault lawyer near me. I'd never filed any legal case in my life. But something had shifted deep inside me. I wasn't just a mother anymore. I was a shield. By noon, I had a consultation with Carla Reyes, a child advocacy attorney recommended by Megan. She had years of experience handling abuse cases, and when I told her what happened, she didn't blink. "You have video proof?" she asked. I handed her my phone. She watched silently. When the slap rang out in the small office, she paused, looked up at me, and said clearly, "We're filing criminal charges for child physical assault against Jessica Brooks. And we'll add charges of emotional neglect and child endangerment against your parents, Linda and Frank." Her words were cool, deliberate, exactly what I needed to hear. That evening, I sat with Zoe and explained everything. "This isn't just to punish them," I told her. "It's to make sure they can never hurt you or anyone else ever again." Zoe nodded, her fingers curled around her fox. "Are we gonna win?" she asked. "We already did," I whispered, "the moment you told the truth." By the following day, a restraining order had been issued against Jessica, Linda, and Frank. Legally, they were now barred from coming near us or contacting Zoe in any form. Attorney Reyes submitted the video to the court as primary evidence, along with Zoe's recorded statement. We filed the case through Family Court and Juvenile Protection Services under California's Child Protection Act. Reyes explained that striking a minor, especially by someone in a non-parental role and in a public setting, was a criminal act. And since Linda and Frank not only failed to intervene but actively contributed to our removal, they were considered complicit. This wasn't just a legal case. It was a statement. You don't get to hit a child and walk away untouched. Not anymore. That same evening, I received a call from the court-appointed child welfare officer. She had seen the video. "We'll be doing a home visit," she said gently. "Not because we doubt you. We just want to document that this child has someone who stood up for her." I looked over at Zoe, sitting quietly at the kitchen table, sketching flowers with colored pencils. "Yes," I said, my voice steady. "She does." I wasn't prepared for what came next. Before sharing the video online, Megan asked for my permission. At first, I hesitated. I didn't want our trauma turned into social media drama. But then I replayed Zoe's voice from her recording, the steady courage in her words, the quiet pain behind her eyes. "This isn't revenge," I told Megan. "It's the truth." She posted the clip that same night. First came Zoe's short, honest message. Then the unedited footage. No background music, no captions, no filters. Just reality. The spilled punch, the slap, Zoe's cries, the stunned silence of the crowd. By morning, the video had over 200,000 views. By lunchtime, Walker Justice for Zoe was trending across Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. Parenting bloggers reposted it. News outlets picked it up. Child welfare advocates chimed in. Even celebrities commented, calling it unacceptable and reminding everyone, "She's a child." People weren't just watching, they were outraged. Why didn't anyone stop her? Where were the adults? This is what goes on behind the facade of perfect families. And beneath every post, one phrase kept surfacing. "Zoe, we believe you." Jessica responded, of course. 2 days after the video went viral, she posted a polished, overproduced clip to her own account. Soft piano played in the background. Her makeup was perfectly imperfect. Her voice trembled. Just enough. "I'm truly sorry for how things appeared," she began. "But I was under immense pressure. It was all a big misunderstanding. I love my niece." She never said Zoe's name. She never acknowledged the slap. Instead, she vaguely hinted that the situation had been twisted by people out to ruin her reputation. And then came the most infuriating part. She implied I had pushed Zoe to act out for attention. I was trembling as I watched it. Zoe, sitting beside me with a box of crayons, looked up and said calmly, "She's lying." "I know," I whispered. But this time, the world wasn't falling for Jessica's performance. Her comments section erupted. "She hit a child and now she's crying for sympathy? Evelyn, we believe you and Zoe. Keep your fake tears. The internet has receipts." Followers began to vanish by the thousands. Sponsors pulled out. Brand partnerships were terminated within 48 hours. Public relations teams issued formal statements condemning her actions. It was a storm, but for once, it wasn't pouring on us. Megan called and said, "They thought they could write the ending, but you rewrote it." I didn't feel victorious, but I did feel something else. I could finally breathe. Later, Zoe asked, "Are we safe now?" I nodded and smiled. "We're getting there." It was the third night after the video went viral when I heard a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. I glanced through the peephole and froze. Adam, Jessica's fiancé, or maybe not anymore. He stood in the hallway wearing the same suit from the engagement party, jacket gone, tie loosened, eyes heavy with something between guilt and disillusionment. I opened the door slowly. "Hi," he said softly. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" I didn't respond. I waited. "I saw the video," he continued, "and all the comments. I didn't know what to say at first, but I couldn't stay silent." I stepped aside and let him in. Zoe looked up from the couch, clutching her stuffed fox. Her eyes widened when she saw him, but she said nothing. Adam knelt down beside her. "I'm so sorry for what happened to you," he said gently. "What Jessica did, what your family did. It wasn't right. And you were incredibly brave to tell the truth." Zoe gave a small nod and lowered her gaze. He stood and turned to me. "I didn't want to believe it at first," he admitted. "But after watching that video, I couldn't unsee it." I offered him a glass of water. He didn't touch it. Instead, he stared off, like trying to piece together a puzzle he didn't realize he'd been living inside. "There's more," he said after a pause. "After everything happened, I couldn't sleep. I remembered Jessica mentioning working with a PR team for the engagement, so I checked the shared wedding planning folder." He pulled out his phone and opened a chain of emails. They were messages between her and her manager. She was negotiating a $500,000 brand deal tied to our wedding content, without telling me. And she was arranging a prenup that would protect her if she decided to walk away once the hype faded. That was her plan all along. My mouth went dry. "She never loved me," he whispered. "She loved what I looked like beside her." I didn't know how to respond. Then he added, "I ended it this morning. I told her, and I told her mother. I've already canceled all pending sponsorships and business deals." Zoe looked up from the couch. "So, you're not going to marry Aunt Jessica?" she asked. Adam gave her a gentle smile. "No, Zoe, I'm not." Then he turned to me, one last time. "You were right, Evelyn, about all of them. I'm sorry it took me so long to realize it." And then he left. For the first time in years, I felt what it was like to have someone stand beside me, not because they were supposed to, but because they chose to. 3 days later, an email arrived. The subject line was marked urgent. It was from my father. "We need to talk. This has gone too far. A private resolution meeting has been scheduled. Attendance is expected. No apology, no regret. Just cold, heavy expectation." I stared at the screen, heat rising in my chest. Years ago, I would have deleted a message like that without hesitation, but not this time. I forwarded it to Attorney Reyes. Her response was brief. If you go, don't go alone. I took her advice, both legally and emotionally. I told her I could handle myself, but I made sure Zoe stayed with Eleanor during the meeting, just in case. The meeting was set in a neutral office suite in Beverly Hills, tasteful, quiet, and sterile. When I walked in, Jessica sat with her arms crossed and sunglasses on, as if hiding from the consequences of her actions. My mother, Linda, wore a crisp cream blouse and an expression she had clearly rehearsed in the mirror. My father, Frank, didn't even look up. I sat down across from them, calm and composed. Jessica spoke first. "You've humiliated this family beyond belief," she snapped. I said nothing. "You let your daughter post lies online." "They weren't lies," I said, cutting in. Linda let out a sharp sigh. "Evelyn, this could have been resolved privately, like adults." "You mean swept under the rug?" I asked. "Like everything else?" "You've always been dramatic," she snapped. "You're doing this just to make us look bad." I leaned forward, holding her gaze calm and steady. "No, you did that to yourselves." And then Adam walked in. Everyone turned. "I've heard enough," he said, his voice clear. "Jessica, you used me. You used your niece. You twisted the truth to protect your image." He placed a folder on the table. "These are official terminations of all the business contracts we shared. I've pulled out every investor. The wedding is off, and I want nothing to do with you or the circus you built around this." Jessica's lips parted, but no words came out. She looked like someone watching her world collapse in slow motion. Finally, Frank spoke. "Adam, let's not create a scene." "You already did," Adam replied coldly. I stood to leave. Jessica's voice rang out behind me. "You always wanted this, didn't you? To destroy me." I paused at the door, turned, and answered quietly, "No, I just wanted you to love us, but since that was too much to ask, at least now we're free." And I walked out. Zoe was waiting in the next room, coloring beside Eleanor. When she saw me, she jumped up with a smile and ran into my arms. That meeting didn't just close a chapter, it ended a lifetime of silence I had carried like a second skin. The morning after the meeting, I woke up to sunlight streaming through the blinds. Not the kind that mocks your grief, but the kind that whispers gently, "You made it through." Zoe was still asleep, curled under her favorite fox blanket, her mouth slightly open, her face finally relaxed. The apartment, my late husband's apartment, felt different. For the first time in years, it didn't feel like something I was barely holding on to. It felt like home. I made coffee, sat at our small dining table, and opened my laptop. My freelance work was steady, but something inside me had shifted. I didn't want just income. I wanted meaning. That's when the idea came. I started sketching designs for a small online shop, a collection of digital prints, empowering quotes for single mothers, creative kits for kids, and a mission that felt deeply personal. Art that speaks when you can't. I called it Z+E Studio. Within a month, we had over 10,000 followers on Instagram. Orders started coming in regularly. Parenting pages shared my designs. A children's charity reached out about a collaboration. Zoe helped with packaging and even designed some doodles that we turned into sticker sheets. She'd hold one up and ask, "Do you think other kids will like this?" "I think they'll love it," I'd say. And they did. The same community that believed Zoe's voice now embraced our healing. Eleanor checked in often, not like a mother-in-law, but like a mentor. Megan became a regular presence, bringing cookies and news from the world we'd quietly stepped back from. Jessica tried a few more times to spin the narrative online, but the damage had already been done. Her influence had lost its hold. As for Linda and Frank, they followed the restraining order. Not out of remorse, but because they feared more public fallout. And maybe, just maybe, because they finally understood they'd crossed a line they could never return from. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. One evening, as Zoe and I sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by open sketchbooks and empty snack wrappers, she looked up at me and asked, "Is this what normal feels like?" I paused for a moment, then said, "Not just normal. This is what safe feels like." She leaned into me, pencils still in hand, and whispered, "I like it here." And in that quiet moment, I understood. I hadn't just won a case. I hadn't just silenced the people who had tried to break us. I had built something stronger in their place, something honest, something ours. It was a quiet Wednesday afternoon. Zoe was at her desk, drawing a cartoon fox in a superhero cape. I was answering customer emails for our shop when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something in my gut told me to pick up. "Evelyn," came the voice, low, familiar. My father. I didn't say a word. "I'm not good at this," he started. "Never have been." He paused, then continued, "But that day, at the meeting, I heard what you said, and I realized I should have spoken up a long time ago." My fingers clenched around the phone. "We hurt you," he went on. "Not just now, for years, and I let it happen. I don't expect forgiveness. I needed you to hear it. At least once." There was a long silence, the kind that fills every corner of a room. I closed my eyes and whispered, "Thank you," then added, "But I'm not carrying this anymore." He exhaled slowly. "I understand." And then he hung up. No defenses, no excuses, just the final click of a door quietly closing. For good. That night, I pulled out an old photo album I had tucked deep in the back of our closet. The cover was worn, its edges curled. Inside were pages filled with family memories, birthday parties, holidays, graduations, but almost every picture centered around Jessica. In one Christmas photo, I was barely visible, half hidden behind the tree. Forgotten, even in print. Zoe sat beside me, flipping through the pages. She paused at that photo. "Why aren't you in more pictures?" she asked. I gave a faint smile and brushed her hair from her face. "Because they didn't see me," I said quietly. "Not in the way I needed them to." She was silent for a few seconds. Then she closed the album, looked straight into my eyes, and said, "I see you." That was it. The words I didn't know I'd been waiting my entire life to hear. I pulled her into a hug, and the tears came. Not from pain, not from bitterness, but from the relief of finally being free. The next day, I packed the photo album into a cardboard box and slid it to the back of the closet, not out of anger, and not to erase the past, but to make space. Space for the life we were creating, one not built on obligation or silence, but on honesty, choice, and love. A few weeks later, I did something I hadn't done in years. I booked a trip, just for Zoe and me. No obligations. No family guilt. No lingering shadows. Sedona, Arizona. It had been a dream of mine for years. Something about the red rocks, the vast sky, the hush of the desert had always called to me. But there was always a reason to cancel. Not this time. We stayed in a cozy cedar cabin tucked beneath the cliffs. No neighbors, no noise, no one to perform for, no one to prove anything to, just us. Zoe ran freely along the hiking trails during the day, collecting small stones and pointing out cloud shapes with excitement. At night, we sat outside, wrapped in thick blankets, sipping hot cocoa and tracing constellations in the sky. There was no internet, no calls from attorneys, no echoes of Jessica's betrayal or reminders of my parents' rejection. Just wind, stars, peace. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the red rocks in golden hues, Zoe and I sat together on a wooden bench overlooking the vast valley. She leaned her head against my shoulder, her legs swinging gently. "Do you think they miss us?" she asked. I didn't pretend not to understand. "Maybe," I said honestly, "but missing someone doesn't mean they were good to you." She was silent for a moment. Then, with the quiet wisdom of a child who had already lived through more than most adults, she asked, "Will we see them again?" I took a deep breath. "Maybe," I replied, "but not if it means we have to shrink ourselves to fit into their world." Zoe nodded slowly, letting my words sink in. She glanced up at the sky. "I like our world better." "So do I," whispered, and I meant it. because that night at the engagement party, I didn't just walk away from an event. I walked away from a lifetime of silence, of shame, of trying to be enough for people who never truly saw me. I stepped into a new life, a better one, a life where my daughter knows she matters, and finally, where I know I do too. As we sat there together, the desert breeze brushing through our hair and stars beginning to shimmer into view above us, I understood something deeply. This wasn't the end of our story. It was only the beginning. Thank you so much for watching this story. If it touched your heart or gave you something to think about, please consider giving it a like. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoy real-life inspired stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more. Your support truly means everything.